I leaned back against the cool leather of my chair, the kind of chair I used to dream about when I was just another underpaid employee sitting in a cubicle. The skyline of Manhattan stretched out in front of me, framed by floor-to-ceiling windows. The city buzzed with life, but up here, 25 stories above it, there was only a hush, the kind of silence that comes with power. My silk blouse rustled slightly as I shifted, crossing one leg over the other, perfectly polished heels catching the sunlight that streamed through the glass. On my desk, my phone buzzed again. A message flashed across the screen, and I felt a smile tug at the corner of my mouth. Of all the people in the world, it was him. Daniel Roberts. My old boss. The man who had once stolen the very idea that could have been my breakthrough. The man who had laughed in my face when I dared to question him. The man who thought he could bury me under his shadow forever. But shadows don't last in the daylight. The irony of it was delicious. Here I was, sitting in the corner office that once belonged to him, with my name engraved on the glass door, Madison Taylor, Chief Executive Officer. And he was the one requesting a meeting. I let the phone buzz again, my manicured fingers hovering over the screen. I thought about how far I'd come, how much I had buried, and how some stories refused to stay buried forever. Today, it was time to let the past walk right through my door. I wasn't always the woman with tailored suits and a skyline view. A decade ago, I was just Madison, the girl with secondhand blazers, chipped nail polish, and a coffee-stained notebook that I carried everywhere like a lifeline. I was 24, fresh out of grad school, burning with ambition and desperate to prove that I belonged in a world where boardrooms were filled with men twice my age. Daniel Roberts was my boss back then. To me, he wasn't just a boss, he was a gatekeeper. If he noticed me, if he approved of my work, maybe I'd finally stop being invisible. I stayed late most nights, long after the cleaning crew had passed through, my fingers stiff from typing, my eyes blurry from staring at spreadsheets and market data. Then it happened, the idea. It came to me like a spark, so bright I could hardly sleep. I scribbled it all down in that battered notebook, a strategy to modernize the company's entire client acquisition model using digital analytics. It wasn't just good, it was revolutionary. I remember the way my hands trembled when I pitched it to Daniel in his office. My voice cracked halfway through, but my passion carried me to the end. For once, he didn't interrupt. He just nodded slowly, tapping his pen on the desk.
"Interesting," he said.
That was it. No smile, no reassurance. Just interesting. 2 weeks later, I sat in the back of the conference room as Daniel presented my idea to the executive board. He had polished it, repackaged it, but it was mine down to the very phrasing. As the board clapped and congratulated him, I felt something inside me shatter. My throat tightened, my palms went cold, and I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. I slipped out to the restroom, locking myself in a stall. I stared at the chipped polish on my nails, at the ink smudges on my fingers from that notebook, and I cried, not loud sobs, but silent tears that burned hotter than fire. I had worked so hard, and in one moment, he had erased me. That night, I called my grandmother. She was the only one who ever seemed to see me clearly. Her voice was raspy with age, but steady. "Baby," she said, "if someone steals your light, you don't chase them in the dark. You build a bigger fire." I looked down at my notebook, the pages crinkled with coffee stains and hope. Her words sank deep into me. The next morning, when I walked back into that office, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to stay invisible. Not anymore. Walking away from that company was the hardest and easiest decision of my life. Hard, because I had no safety net. Easy, because staying meant letting Daniel own every part of my future. I typed my resignation letter on a shaky laptop in my tiny studio apartment, heart pounding like I was breaking up with someone toxic. And in a way, I was. At first, independence didn't look glamorous. It looked like ramen noodles for dinner, an air mattress for a bed, and a stack of unpaid bills on my kitchen counter. But that notebook, my battered, coffee-stained notebook, sat open on the table, pages filled with scribbles and diagrams that no one could take from me. That was my compass. I freelanced anywhere I could. Copywriting for startups. Data entry for small businesses. Anything to keep the lights on while I worked on building something real. Some nights, I stayed awake until dawn, coding with nothing but black coffee and determination. Other nights, doubt crept in. What if Daniel was right? What if I really was too young, too naive? I'd catch my reflection in the window, tired eyes, hair pulled back in a messy bun, and force myself to whisper out loud, "Keep going." And then came Evelyn Price. She was a seasoned consultant I met at a networking event I almost skipped because I couldn't afford the ticket. Evelyn had sharp eyes, a no-nonsense tone, and an uncanny way of seeing right through people. She listened as I nervously explained my ideas, my plans for a company built on transparency, innovation, and respect, everything Daniel's world lacked. Instead of brushing me off, Evelyn leaned in. "Madison," she said, "you're sitting on something big. You just need the guts to scale it." Her mentorship changed everything. She taught me to pitch with confidence, to negotiate without apology, to walk into a room like I deserved to be there. With her guidance, I secured my first real client, a mid-sized retail chain struggling to modernize their marketing. When the contract was signed, I remember clutching that pen, my hands trembling. It wasn't just a signature, it was the beginning of a new life. From there, the small wins stacked up. One client turned into three. Three turned into 10. The ramen dinners gave way to real meals. The air mattress was replaced by a second-hand sofa. Each milestone felt monumental, like I was slowly piecing together the version of myself that Daniel had tried to erase. But I didn't flaunt it. I posted generic updates online, vague enough that no one, especially Daniel, could track my progress. My family thought I was still figuring things out. Old colleagues assumed I had disappeared. I liked it that way. Success felt sweeter in silence. Years passed, and the notebook grew thicker with new ideas, refinements, expansions. Until one day, Evelyn looked at me across her mahogany desk and said, "Madison, it's time. You're not just a consultant anymore. You're CEO." The word hit me like a jolt of electricity.
CEO.
I had gone from crying in a bathroom stall to running my own thriving company. And little did I know, fate was already preparing the sweetest twist of all. The knock on my office door was soft, hesitant. For a man who used to storm through hallways like he owned the ground beneath his feet, Daniel Roberts had never sounded so unsure. "Come in," I called, my voice steady. The door opened, and there he was, a little older, his once perfect hairline thinning, his tailored suit not quite hiding the wear of desperation. He scanned the office slowly, his eyes dragging across every detail, the abstract art on the walls, the sleek glass desk, the awards lining the shelf with my name engraved in gold. His brow furrowed. I could see the realization dawning on him like a storm breaking over the horizon. "Madison?" he asked finally, his voice caught between disbelief and forced politeness. I stood, smoothing the silk of my blouse, and walked around the desk to face him. "It's been a long time, Daniel." He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I didn't realize this was your office." Most people don't. I let the silence stretch, savoring the moment. He cleared his throat, glancing at the company logo displayed proudly on the digital screen behind me. "So you're CEO now?" I tilted my head slightly, meeting his gaze. "Not just CEO. Owner." The words hung in the air like a verdict. His face went slack, and for once, Daniel Roberts, the man who had stolen my voice, had none of his own. He tried to recover, chuckling nervously. "Well, congratulations. Really impressive. You've come a long way since you stole my idea?" I interrupted, my tone calm but sharp enough to cut glass. The color drained from his face. He shifted uncomfortably, fumbling for words. "Look, Madison, business is tough. Ideas get shared, adapted. You were young. You thought I wouldn't fight back." I stepped closer, my heels clicking against the marble floor. "You thought you could erase me, but all you did was ignite me." He looked around the room again, as if the walls themselves were mocking him. "I never imagined you'd build all this." "That's because you never imagined me capable of more than taking notes and fetching coffee." My voice softened, but the steel underneath remained. But while you were busy climbing over people, I was busy building something worth standing on. The silence stretched again, thicker this time. I watched him squirm, the once confident executive now shrinking in front of me. And then came the words I never thought I'd hear. I need your help, Madison. His voice cracked on my name. The markets shifted. My firm, it's struggling. Investors are pulling out. I thought maybe, his eyes flickered with something like shame. Maybe we could work together again. I almost laughed. Almost. The irony was too perfect. The man who once silenced me was now asking for my voice. I leaned back against my desk, folding my arms. You mean work for me? He blinked, swallowing hard. If that's what it takes. For a moment, I let the silence hang, enjoying the reversal of power. I thought back to the night I'd cried in that bathroom stall, the humiliation, the pain.
And now?
Now, Daniel Roberts was standing in my office, asking for a lifeline. I let out a slow breath, steady and deliberate. Daniel, let me be very clear. I don't need you.
But you need me.
And that right there is the difference between us. His shoulders sagged. For the first time, he looked small. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about revenge. This was about closure. About finally claiming the space he once denied me. I smiled, not cruelly, but with the quiet satisfaction of a woman who had fought like hell to stand here. Welcome to my company, Daniel. Try not to forget whose name is on the door this time. Daniel sat across from me at the conference table, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles turned white. The man who once dominated rooms now looked like a guest waiting to be dismissed. I let the silence work on him. Silence was a weapon he had used against me once, the way he ignored my ideas, the way he cut me off mid-sentence. Now it was mine. Finally, I spoke. If you're asking me for a chance, then there are conditions. His eyes flickered up, cautious. Of course. Anything. I almost smiled at the desperation in his voice. 10 years ago, I would have given anything to hear those words. First, I said, keeping my tone calm, measured, deliberate. You'll acknowledge what you did. Not just to me, but to the entire team you undermined to climb higher. You'll admit it publicly. Transparency isn't optional in my company. His Adam's apple bobbed. Publicly. Yes. I leaned forward, folding my hands. I built this place on truth. No one works here under the shadow of stolen credit. If that makes you uncomfortable, you're welcome to walk back out that door. He swallowed hard but didn't move. Second, I continued. You don't get a corner office. You don't get assistants bowing at your feet. You start at the ground level like everyone else who joins us. You'll earn your way up if you can. Daniel's lips parted in protest, but one look from me silenced him. Third, I said, my voice softening just slightly, you'll mentor the junior analysts. The ones with big ideas, the ones who remind me of myself. You'll teach them what not to do, because your mistakes are lessons worth more than your successes. His gaze fell to the polished surface of the table. The weight of the reversal was written in every line of his face. And finally, I paused, letting the moment stretch. You will never again speak over me, underestimate me, or dismiss me. Not here. Not anywhere. That era of your life is over. Do you understand? The silence that followed was thick, but this time it was his silence, not mine. At last, he nodded, the gesture small but real. I understand. I studied him for a long moment. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel revenge. What I felt was something deeper, control.
Choice.
The very things he once stole from me, I now owned. You should know something, Daniel, I said quietly. This isn't about humiliating you. It's about making sure no one else ever goes through what I did. If you can live with that, maybe you'll find redemption here. If not, I gestured toward the door. Well, you already know the way out. He didn't move. He just nodded again, slower this time, more certain. And in that moment, the shift was complete. He was no longer my boss. He was a man standing at the mercy of the very woman he once tried to erase. Weeks passed after Daniel's return, and the office began to feel the shift. At first, the younger employees whispered in shock, unable to believe the infamous Daniel Roberts was now working under me. But soon, the whispers faded as they saw him do the unthinkable. Listen. He sat with junior analysts, reviewing their proposals without stealing their thunder. He took notes during meetings, not leading them but contributing quietly. For the first time, Daniel wasn't the loudest voice in the room, and that silence spoke volumes. I watched it all unfold from my office window, sipping my morning coffee. The irony wasn't lost on me. A decade earlier, I was the one silenced, my tears hidden in a bathroom stall. Now, the man who had taken my credit was learning what it meant to rebuild, brick by brick. One afternoon, I walked past the break room and overheard him speaking with a young intern. She was nervous, clutching her report like I once clutched my notebook. Daniel's voice was quiet, almost humble. If you believe in it, fight for it. Don't let anyone make you smaller than you are. I paused, the words hanging in the air. For the first time, he was giving away what he once stole. And strangely, it didn't sting. It felt right. Later that night, when the office was empty, I sat at my desk and pulled out that same battered notebook I'd carried all those years ago. The pages were worn, the ink faded, but the words still burned with the same fire. My grandmother's advice echoed in my head. If someone steals your light, you build a bigger fire. And I had. I traced my fingers over the ink stains, a smile tugging at my lips. I thought of Evelyn, of my grandmother, of every sleepless night, and every small victory that built this empire. And I thought of Daniel, not with bitterness, but with clarity. He had been the obstacle that forced me to climb higher. The skyline glittered outside my window, the hum of the city below like a lullaby. I closed the notebook gently and whispered into the quiet room, as if speaking to my younger self. You did it, Madison. You built the fire. I stood, straightened my blazer, and looked out at the city I now commanded. He once took my credit. Now I own the company,